A scream pierces the Iraqi desert, where ancient ruins hide deadly secrets. Who stalks Louise Leidner with letters from a brother long dead? As Nurse Amy Leatherin and Hercule Poirot unravel a murder cloaked in a curse, one question haunts: will the sands bury the truth?
Chapter 1. Whispers from the Dust. The sun hung like a molten medallion over the Iraqi horizon, its rays piercing the haze of dust that swirled endlessly across the plains. Nurse Amy Leatherin gripped the railing of the battered truck as it jolted over the rutted track leading to Tel Yarim-Jah. She had left the bustling wards of Baghdad behind, trading the sterile scent of antiseptics for the raw, earthy aroma of the desert. At 38, with a no-nonsense bob of chestnut hair and eyes sharp as surgical steel, Amy sought not adventure, but respite. A contract to tend the ailments of an archaeological expedition promised steady pay and a break from the city's clamor. Yet as the ancient mound loomed ahead, its stepped ziggurat profile etched against the sky like a forgotten giant's staircase, she felt an unexpected thrill stir in her chest. "What secrets do you hide?" she murmured to the wind, half in jest, half in wonder. The truck shuddered to a halt near a cluster of whitewashed tents and mud-brick huts that formed the expedition's makeshift village. A tall, lean man in khaki emerged from the largest structure, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. "Ms. Leatherin? Dr. Eric Leidner," he introduced himself, extending a hand calloused from years of wielding trowels and brushes. His voice was measured, almost melodic, but his gray eyes held a depth that spoke of burdens unspoken. "We've been eagerly awaiting a proper nurse. The desert plays havoc with health, sunstroke, scorpion stings, and the occasional bout of dysentery." Amy nodded, shaking his hand firmly. "Call me Amy. I'm here to keep you all digging, not dying." She glanced around, noting the organized chaos. Workers in turbans sifting through trenches, crates of artifacts stacked under canvas awnings, and the faint hum of electric lights for night work. Dr. Leidner led her through the camp, pointing out the key spots. "That's the antiquities room, our treasure trove. Father Lavigny oversees the inscriptions. He's a monk with a passion for dead languages." As if summoned, a burly figure in a cassock dusted with sand approached, his beard a wild tangle framing a face etched with scholarly fervor. "Ah, the healer arrives. In these sands we unearth not just clay, but the soul's echoes. Beware the whispers of Ashur and Ishtar. They do not take kindly to intruders." He chuckled, but his eyes gleamed with an intensity that made Amy wonder if he half believed his own mysticism. Next came the others. Miss Sheila Riley, a sharp-featured photographer with a cigarette perpetually dangling from her lips, her Irish lilt laced with sarcasm. "Welcome to the sandbox, nurse. If you can handle Leidner's endless lectures on pottery shards, you'll fit right in." Then there was young David Emmett, the American surveyor, his boyish grin belying a keen intellect honed at Yale. "Ma'am, if you need a tour of the real digs, the trenches where the magic happens, just holler." Bill Coleman, the British administrator, waved from afar, his ledger in hand, muttering about supply shortages, and Dr. Carl Reiter nodded curtly, his blond hair bleached whiter by the sun, his focus already drifting back to a half-buried steel. But it was Louise Leidner that captivated Amy from the first glance. She emerged from the main house like a vision from a bygone era, her silk scarf fluttering in the breeze, her golden hair pinned in elegant waves. At perhaps 35, she possessed a fragile beauty that seemed at odds with the harsh environment. Porcelain skin, violet eyes that held a perpetual shadow, and a smile that flickered like a candle in the wind. "Amy, isn't it? Eric has spoken so highly of your skills. I'm Louise, his wife. Come, let's get you settled before the heat turns us all to mummies." As they walked to Amy's assigned quarters, a modest room with a cot, basin, and mosquito netting, Louise chatted lightly about the expedition's finds: a cache of cylinder seals depicting mythical battles, a bronze dagger etched with incantations. Eric lives for this, you know. The past is his true love. There was a wistful note in her voice, quickly masked by a laugh. Amy unpacked her few belongings: a medical kit, a worn novel, and a photograph of her late brother from the Great War, feeling the weight of the desert's isolation settle like fine silt. The first days blurred into a routine of practical duties. Amy treated a laborer's infected blister, administered quinine to ward off malaria, and even improvised a sling for Miss Riley's sprained wrist after a tumble in a trench. Mornings began with the call to prayer echoing from distant minarets, followed by breakfasts of flatbread, dates, and strong tea around a communal fire. Evenings brought cooler air and stories swapped under the stars: Emmett recounting tales of American speakeasies, Coleman grumbling about bureaucratic red tape from the Baghdad Museum. It was on the third evening, as the sun painted the ziggurat in hues of crimson and gold, that Louise sought Amy out. They sat on the veranda of the Leidners' house, sipping mint tea while the camp quieted. Louise's hands trembled slightly as she set down her cup. "Amy, may I confide in you? As a nurse, you're accustomed to secrets, I imagine." Amy leaned forward, her professional instincts alert. "Of course, Mrs. Leatheron. What's troubling you?" Louise glanced over her shoulder, as if the shadows themselves might eavesdrop. "It's these premonitions. Ever since we arrived, I've felt watched. Not by the workers or the team. No, something older. Eric unearthed an ancient Assyrian tablet last season, inscribed with a curse against grave robbers. 'The breath of the underworld shall choke the thief,' it said. Silly, isn't it? But lately, dreams plague me. A figure in ancient robes whispering my name." Amy patted her hand reassuringly. The heat can play tricks, and isolation amplifies fears. Perhaps a mild sedative. But Louise shook her head, her eyes wide. "It's more than that. My family has its own shadows. Back in France, before I met Eric, there was a tragedy, a cousin lost in a fire, rumors of inheritance disputes. Sometimes I wonder if curses follow bloodlines." She paused, then added softly, "Promise you'll stay close? I feel safer with you here." Amy agreed, touched by the vulnerability in this otherwise poised woman. As night fell, she retired to her room, the conversation lingering like the faint scent of jasmine from Louise's perfume. The next morning brought a fresh discovery in the trenches: a small ivory figurine of a winged bull, its eyes inlaid with lapis lazuli. The team gathered around, excitement buzzing like flies. Dr. Leidner held it aloft. "Lamassu, guardian spirit. This could date to the Neo-Assyrian period, 8th century B.C. Father Lavigny crossed himself. "A protector, yes, but remember, such beings demand respect, or they turn vengeful." Emmett sketched it furiously in his notebook, while Miss Riley snapped photographs, her flash popping like distant gunfire. "If this doesn't make the journals, nothing will," she quipped. Even Reiter cracked a rare smile, murmuring about parallels to Babylonian myths.
Amy observed from the sidelines, bandaging a cut on a worker's hand. But her thoughts drifted to Louise, who had stayed indoors, claiming a headache. Later, during lunch, a spread of lamb kebabs and rice, Amy checked on her. Louise was pale, staring at a blank wall. "Another dream last night," she whispered. The figure held a tablet, and the words, they burned. "Let's get you some fresh air," Amy suggested, leading her to a shaded spot near the ziggurat's base. There, amid the crumbling bricks etched with faded cuneiform, Louise seemed to rally. Eric proposed to me here, you know. Amid the ruins, he said our love would endure like these stones. But her smile faltered, and she clutched Amy's arm. What if the past resents the living? Amy dismissed it gently. Ruins are just echoes, Mrs. Leidner. We make our own fates. That afternoon, as Amy inventoried supplies in the medical tent, Bill Coleman burst in, his face flushed. "Nurse, you've got to see this. Writers found a seal with a scorpion motif. Lavigne says it's tied to poison rituals." Intrigued, Amy followed him to the antiquities room, where the team huddled over the artifact. Father Lavigne traced the engraving with a reverent finger. In ancient Mesopotamia, the scorpion goddess Ishara warded against venom, but also inflicted it on the unworthy, a dual-edged blade. Dr. Leidner nodded thoughtfully. This could link to the curse tablet. Patterns emerging, protection and peril intertwined. Miss Riley rolled her eyes. "Next you'll say it's haunted. Pass the gin. I need fortification against all this mumbo-jumbo." Emmett laughed, but Amy noticed Louise hovering at the door, her face ashen. "Eric, perhaps we should leave such things buried," she said softly. "Nonsense, darling," he replied, though his tone held a hint of strain. "Knowledge illuminates the dark." As the group dispersed, Louise pulled Amy aside in the corridor. "Did you hear? Poison rituals. It's as if the desert is mocking me." Her voice dropped to a hush. "Promise you won't think me mad?" "But I found something this morning, a scrap of papyrus in my drawer, not from the dig. It said, 'Shadows awaken.'" Amy's brow furrowed. "Show me." But Louise shook her head. "I burned it. Fear got the better of me." Doubt crept in, but Amy chalked it up to nerves. The desert could warp perceptions, after all. Evening descended with a sudden coolness, the stars emerging like scattered jewels. The team gathered for dinner under lantern light. Grilled fish from the Euphrates, olives, and cheese. Conversations flowed, Ryder debating etymology with Lavigne, Coleman complaining about delayed shipments, Emmett sharing a joke about a camel's bad breath. Louise, seated beside Amy, picked at her food. "Tell me about your life, Amy, before this." I smiled. "Nothing glamorous. Nursing in London during the war, then Baghdad. Lost my brother at the Somme. Taught me to value the living." Louise's eyes softened. "Loss binds us. My own family, well, let's say the past has sharp claws." As the meal ended, a worker approached Dr. Leidner, handing him a sealed envelope. "For the Madam, Effendi, delivered by a messenger from Hassania." Louise's hand trembled as she took it. The seal was wax, imprinted with an unfamiliar symbol, a stylized eye. She opened it slowly, her face draining of color. "Oh God," she whispered. Amy peered over. The paper was aged, the ink faded but legible. "The dead do not forget. Your sins carve their own tombs." The table fell silent. Dr. Leidner snatched the letter. "What nonsense is this? A prank?" Father Lavigne examined it. The script, archaic like our tablets, but fresh ink. Miss Riley snorted. "Someone's having a laugh. Probably one of the locals stirring trouble." Emmett frowned. "Or internal. We should check alibis." Louise stood abruptly, swaying. "It's the curse. It's found me." She fled to her room, Amy following. In the dim light of the bedroom, Louise collapsed onto the bed. "Amy, stay with me tonight. I can't bear it alone." Amy agreed, settling into a chair with a blanket. As the hours ticked by, the camp quieted, save for the occasional howl of a jackal. Louise slept fitfully, murmuring in her dreams. Amy dozed lightly, but a sound jolted her awake. The faint scrape of footsteps outside the window. She arose, peering into the darkness. The ziggurat loomed, its silhouette a brooding sentinel. Was that a shadow moving? Or just the wind sculpting dunes?
She dismissed it, returning to her vigil. But as dawn crept in, painting the sky in soft pinks, a chill lingered in Amy's bones. A premonition that the desert's whispers were only beginning, and the bones beneath might yet stir. Yet for now, the night had passed without incident. Louise awoke calmer, the letter's terror fading like a bad dream. Amy resolved to watch closely, her nurse's instinct sensing deeper currents. The dig continued, the team buzzing with the day's prospects, and Amy found a quiet satisfaction in her role amid the ancient echoes. The curse, if it existed, seemed quelled for the moment, buried once more in the sands.
Chapter 2. Shadows on the Clay Tablets. The relentless Iraqi sun beat down on Tel Urimja like a blacksmith's hammer, forging the days into an unyielding rhythm of excavation and discovery. Amy Leatherin had settled into a role with the efficiency of a seasoned campaigner, her medical kit a constant companion amid the swirling dust devils that danced across the site. Mornings now began with the sharp tang of coffee brewed over open flames, shared with the team as they plotted the day's assaults on the buried past. But beneath the surface of camaraderie, Amy sensed a shifting undercurrent, as if the ancient soil itself harbored resentments long fermented. Dr. Leidner, ever the visionary leader, had expanded the trenches eastward, chasing rumors of a hidden palace wing from the Assyrian Empire's twilight years. "We're on the cusp," he declared one dawn, his voice carrying over the clink of tools. "These layers could reveal trade routes to forgotten kingdoms, spices from India, lapis from Afghanistan." His enthusiasm infected the workers, who chanted rhythmic work songs in Arabic, their picks rising and falling like metronomes. Amy's duties pulled her between the dig and the camp's quieter corners. She treated Father Lavinia's persistent cough, blamed on inhaled grit from poring over fragile inscriptions, and advised Miss Riley on avoiding sun blisters during her endless lithography sessions. "Slather on the zinc oxide, Sheila," Amy said, handing over a tin. "You're turning lobster red." Miss Riley smirked, adjusting her camera strap. "Better red than dead from boredom. If I snap one more photo of a cracked pot, I'll shatter myself." Her wit was a spark in the dry air, but Amy noticed how her irises lingered on young David Emmett, who in turn orbited Louise Leidner like a devoted satellite. Emmett, with his lanky frame and earnest Midwestern drawl, had taken to lingering near the main house, offering Louise wildflowers plucked from the scrubby riverbanks. "Mrs. Leidner, these reminded me of you. Delicate, but tough enough to bloom here," he said one afternoon, presenting a clutch of thistles. Louise accepted them with a gracious smile, though her eyes darted nervously. "How kind, David, but mind the thorns, they draw blood unexpectedly." Amy, passing by with a tray of bandages, caught the exchange and noted Miss Riley's scowl from afar. Later, over tea in the shade, Riley vented, "That boy's mooning like a calf. Louise encourages it, bats her lashes, and plays the damsel. If I were her, I'd tell him to shove off." Amy raised an eyebrow. "Jealousy doesn't suit you, Sheila. David's harmless." "Harmless? Ha! In this heat, even puppies bite." Riley stubbed out her cigarette and stalked off, leaving Amy pondering the fragile egos simmering under the sun. As the week progressed, the finds mounted. A hoard of clay boulets, seals impressed with royal emblems, and a fragment of a prism inscribed with battle chronicles. Dr. Karl Reiter, the stoic Swede, grew animated for once, his blue eyes alight as he translated. "This speaks of Ashurbanipal's conquests, lions slain, cities razed. But look here, a warning against betraying kin. The brother who rises against brother invites the gods' wrath." Father Lavigny nodded solemnly, his cassock dusted anew. Echoes of Cain and Abel, the ancients knew the poison of fraternal strife. His words hung heavy, and Amy glanced at Louise, who had joined the circle but now fidgeted with her necklace, a silver chain with a pendant shaped like a crescent moon. That evening, as the teen catalogued the day's haul in the antiquities room, Louise pulled her into a side alcove. The air was thick with the scent of linseed oil used to preserve the artifacts. "Amy," she prouted, "the letters, they've returned, 3 more since that first one.
She produced them from her pocket, yellowed envelopes with the same eerie eye seal. Amy examined them carefully. The first read, "Blood calls to blood. The drowned demand reckoning." The second, "Your silence drowned me. Now mine will drown you." The third, most chilling, "The river remembers, sister. I rise from its depths." "Sister?" Amy echoed. "You mentioned a cousin before, but this—" Luis's voice trembled. "Not a cousin, a brother. My half-brother Raoul. We grew up in Provence, wild and close, until an accident. He fell into the Rhone during a storm, arguing over my father's will. I was there, Amy. The current took him. But these letters, they invoke his name, his rage." Amy folded the papers. "Have you shown Eric?" "Not yet. He'd dismiss it as hysteria. But feel the paper. It's like the papyrus from the dig, yet fresh." Luis's eyes pleaded. "Help me watch for the sender. Someone here knows my past." Amy agreed, tucking the letters away. As they rejoined the group, Dr. Leidner was pacing, his pipe clenched between his teeth. "These inscriptions trouble me. Patterns of vengeance recurring across millennia." His smoke curled like incense, veiling his furrowed brow. The next day brought a shift in the weather, a rare bank of clouds rolling in from the west, promising relief but carrying the metallic scent of impending rain. The team pushed harder, unearthing a cluster of cuneiform tablets baked hard as stone. Reiter and Lavigny bent over them, debating translations under a makeshift tarp. "This one's a lament," Reiter said flatly. "A king mourning a sibling's betrayal. The serpent in my house strikes without warning." Lavigny countered. "No, it's a spell, invoking Utu for justice against kinslayers." Their voices rose, drawing the others. Emmett sketched the tablets, while Coleman tallied them in his ledger. Luis, assisting with brushing off residue, suddenly paled. "That symbol, the coiled snake. Raoul had a tattoo like that from his sailing days." She backed away, knocking over a brush.
Dr. Leidner steadied her. "Darling, it's coincidence. The past is dead clay." But Amy saw Lavigny's furtive glance toward a locked cabinet housing restricted artifacts, items too fragile or controversial for open display. Later, as she restocked supplies, she caught Reiter slipping a small tablet into his satchel, his usual silence broken by a muttered Swedish curse when he noticed her. "Just for study," he said hastily, replacing it. Suspicion gnawed at Amy. Was the camp a nest of secrets, each member harboring motives as layered as the site's strata? Midweek, a sand viper slithered into the trenches, causing panic. A worker screamed as it coiled near his foot, but Emmett dispatched it with a shovel. "Close call," he said, wiping sweat. Louise, watching from above, clutched her throat. Snakes? Raoul feared them, said they'd come for the guilty. Miss Riley nearby rolled her eyes. Drama queen. If every critter's an omen, we're doomed. But her barbs lacked their usual bite. Amy sensed envy festering into something sharper. That night, thunder grumbled over the Euphrates, the river's waters churning dark and restless. The team gathered around a bonfire, flames leaping like defiant spirits against the encroaching storm. Father Lavigny, inspired, suggested a remembrance circle, sharing tales of the departed to honor the site's ghosts. "Like a séance?" Coleman joked, passing around a flask of Eric. "Not quite," Lavigny replied. "A communion with history." They sat in a ring, Leidner thoughtful, Reiter withdrawn, Emmett eager, Riley skeptical, Louise tense beside Amy. Lavigny began, recounting a lost monastery brother. Then Emmett shared his grandfather's frontier stories. When it reached Louise, she hesitated. "My brother Raoul, he loved storms, said they cleansed sins, but one took him, swept away in rage." Her voice cracked. "Sometimes I hear him in the wind." Thunder boomed, and Louise gripped Amy's arm. "Listen, footsteps. In the house corridors, empty but approaching." The group strained, but heard only the fire's crackle and distant rain. Riley laughed. "It's the Eric talking. Or perhaps your conscience, dear." Emmett bristled. "That's uncalled for, Sheila." Tension spiked, but Leidner diffused it. "Enough. Storms stir imaginations." As they dispersed, Amy lingered, scanning the shadows. There, a fleeting silhouette darting toward the riverbank. Human? Jackal? It vanished into the gloom. Back in the house, Louise retired early, Amy staying to soothe her with chamomile. It was real. Raoul's gait, limping from an old injury. I nodded, though doubt lingered. "Rest now. I'll check the perimeter." Stepping out, Amy encountered Reiter, smoking alone. "Nurse, you believe in ghosts?" "Only the ones we create," she replied. He grunted, his silence resuming like a dropped veil. The storm broke at midnight, rain lashing the tents like whips. Amy dozed fitfully in her room, dreams weaving ancient curses with modern fears. A soft thud awoke her, the slip of paper under Louise's door, adjacent to hers. She retrieved it. Another sealed envelope, wax intact, the eye symbol glaring. Inside, "Revelations await in the depths. Dig deeper, sister, or be buried." Amy pocketed it, heart pounding. The camp slept, but the thunder's rumble echoed like laughter from the cradle of civilization. Dawn would bring new digs, but for now the shadows on the clay tablets seemed to writhe alive, promising truths that could shatter more than pottery. As dawn light filtered through the clouds, the team emerged to assess storm damage. Trenches flooded, artifacts muddied, but Amy's mind fixed on the letter's threat. Louise awoke refreshed, oddly serene. Perhaps it's a sign to confront the past. Dr. Leidner announced a push into a new sector where seismic scans hinted at chambers below. "We'll unearth what hides," he said, pipe smoke rising defiantly. Amy watched the group, Lavigny's pious mutterings, Reiter's evasive eyes, Riley's pointed jabs at Emmett's protectiveness, and Coleman's furtive counts. The unease coiled tighter, a serpent awakening. Yet the day unfolded with purpose, the dig's pulse steady, offering a fragile truce against the gathering shadows.
Chapter 3. The Strangled Echo. The air at Tel Yarimja hung heavy with the scent of wet earth, the storm's aftermath leaving the dig site a patchwork of slick mud and stubborn grit. Nurse Amy Leatherin navigated the trenches with care, her boots sinking into the softened ground as she delivered a fresh batch of antiseptic to a worker nursing a gashed forearm. The past days had sharpened her senses. The camp's pulse beat with unease, fueled by Louise Leidner's cryptic letters and her tales of a vengeful brother lost to the Rhone's currents. Yet the expedition pressed on, driven by Dr. Eric Leidner's relentless pursuit of the past, a palace chamber rumored to lie beneath the eastern mound, its secrets locked in clay. Morning light glinted off a newly unearthed find, a limestone relief half exposed in a trench, depicting a regal woman, her throat clasped by serpentine hands in a ritualistic choke. The team gathered, their breaths catching at the artistry. Dr. Leidner knelt beside it, brushing away dirt with reverence. A queen, perhaps Ninlil, offered to the underworld. 8th century BC, I'd wager. The detail, the anguish in her eyes, it's extraordinary. Father Lavinia, his cassock streaked with mud, murmured a prayer. A sacrifice to appease Enlil's wrath. The serpent hands symbolized divine judgment, not mortal murder. His voice carried a weight that made Amy glance at Louise, who stood at the trench's edge, her face pale as the limestone itself. "It's uncanny," Louise whispered, her fingers tracing her own throat. "That necklace, see the braided cord? It's like mine." She touched the silver crescent pendant at her neck, her eyes wide with something beyond fear, recognition. Miss Sheila Riley, snapping photographs, snorted. "You're seeing ghosts in every shadow, Louise. It's just a rock carving, not your family album." Her Irish lilt cut sharp, but Amy caught a flicker of unease in her green eyes, as if the relief stirred her too. David Emmett, sketching the find, paused his pencil. "Mrs. Leidner, maybe step back. The air's thick down here. Could be the heat messing with you." His concern was earnest, but Amy mooted how his gaze lingered on Louise, a silent devotion that drew a scowl from Riley. Dr. Carl Reiter, silent as ever, scribbled notes, his blonde hair plastered with sweat. "The iconography suggests occult ritual, death as rebirth. We need the rest of it uncovered." His voice was clipped, almost impatient, as if the stone held answers he craved. Amy lingered, her nurse's instincts tingling. The relief's imagery echoed Louise's tales of curses and betrayed kin, a coincidence too stark to dismiss. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Amy approached Louise, who stood frozen, staring at the carving. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a specter." Louise forced a smile. "Just the past, Amy. It has a way of mirroring the present. That figure, she feels like a warning." She dropped her voice. "Raoul, my brother, he once said I'd pay for leaving him behind. What if he's not gone?" Amy guided her to a shaded bench. "Grief can conjure ghosts. Let's focus on the now. Maybe a cool cloth for your head." But Louise's hand gripped hers, cold despite the heat. "Stay near tonight, please. The dreams are worse." The day unfolded with frenetic energy. Workers hauled buckets of earth, uncovering more of the relief. A frieze of mourners, their hands raised in lament. Leidner theorized it marked a royal tomb, its entrance still buried. "If we find it, we'll rewrite Assyrian history," he said over lunch, his pipe smoke curling like a question mark. But tension simmered beneath the excitement. Father Lavinia accused Bill Coleman of misplacing a crate of artifacts, his voice booming across the mess tent. "Carelessness, Mr. Coleman, risks our legacy. Those seals were catalogued. Where are they?" Coleman, red-faced, slammed his ledger down. "I'm not your thief, Padre. Check your own pockets before preaching." The air crackled and Amy intervened, offering tea to cool tempers. Coleman muttered an apology, but Lavinia's eyes narrowed as if tallying more than artifacts. Later, Amy found Louise in the antiquities room, sorting pottery shards with trembling hands. "I can't shake it, Amy. The relief, the letters, they're weaving together." She lowered her voice. "Raoul was no saint. We fought over our father's estate, land, money, secrets. He swore I'd regret my share. Then the river took him, or so I thought." Amy frowned. "Could someone here know your story? The letters feel personal, not ancient." Louise nodded. "I've wondered. Eric knows bits, but not all. The others, maybe David overheard something, or Sheila's prying. She's sharp, that one." As dusk painted the ziggurat in amber, Amy accompanied Louise back to the main house. The camp buzzed with evening routines, workers chanting as they packed tools, Riley developing photos in a makeshift darkroom, Emmett plotting survey lines by lantern light. But an undercurrent of disquiet lingered, like the hum of distant thunder. Inside, Louise paced her room, her silk robe trailing like a ghost. "Amy, will you sleep here tonight? Just on the cot. I feel exposed." She gestured to the window, its shutters rattling in a sudden gust. "Of course," Amy said, setting up her vigil. She placed her medical bag within reach, its familiar weight grounding her. Louise settled into bed, clutching a worn diary. "My memories of Raoul. I write to keep him at bay." As moonlight filtered through the shutters, Amy sat awake, her thoughts a tangle of clues. The ancient script of the letters, the chilling imagery of the relief, Lavinia's accusations, Reiter's secrecy. The camp felt like a chessboard, each piece hiding its moves. Sleep tugged at her, but a piercing scream shattered the silence. Amy bolted upright, heart pounding. Louise thrashed on the bed, her hands clawing at her throat. "He's here!" she gasped, eyes wild. Amy rushed to her side, checking her pulse, racing but alive. "A nightmare," Amy soothed, fetching water. "You're safe." "No, Amy," she shook her head, tears streaming. "I saw him, Raoul, his face scarred, his hands reaching. He said, 'You can't hide.'"
Amy lit a lamp, casting warm light across the room. "Dreams twist reality. Let's stay calm." But as she adjusted the blanket, her foot brushed something under the bed, a small, cold object. She knelt, retrieving a bronze amulet, its surface etched with a coiled snake, mirroring the tablet writer had described. "Where did this come from?" Amy asked, holding it up. Louise paled. "I've never seen it. But that snake, Raoul's tattoo. It can't be coincidence." Amy pocketed the amulet, resolving to show Leidner in the morning. She stayed by Louise's side until dawn. The night passed in uneasy quiet. But the unease lingered, a shadow cast by unseen hands. Morning brought a grim discovery. As Amy escorted Louise to breakfast, a worker ran from the main house, his face ashen. "Effendi, the lady, Mrs. Leidner, she's dead!" Amy's heart sank. She raced to Louise's room, the teen trailing behind. There, on the bed, lay Louise, her eyes staring blankly, her silver necklace twisted tight around her throat like a noose. The room was locked, the shutters secure, no signs of struggle beyond the cruel cord. Dr. Leidner collapsed beside her, his sobs raw. "My love, my light," he choked, clutching her hand. Amy checked for a pulse. None. The skin was cool, death mere hours old. Father Lavigny crossed himself, murmuring Latin prayers. Riley, for once speechless, clutched her camera like a shield. Emmett's face crumpled, while Reiter stood rigid, his eyes unreadable. Coleman stammered, "How? The door was bolted." Amy's mind raced. The amulet, the letters, the relief, all threads in a tapestry of dread. "We need the police," she said firmly, "and someone who can unravel this." Leidner looked up, eyes hollow. "Poirot, Hercule Poirot, he's in Baghdad, solved the Bosra merchant case last year. Send for him." A telegram was dispatched, and by midday a dust plume signaled the car's arrival. Hercule Poirot stepped out, a dapper figure in a pristine suit, his mustache a perfect crescent under sharp gray-green eyes. He surveyed the scene with a calm that belied the chaos. "Mes amis," he said, his French accent crisp, "death in the desert is seldom simple. Let us begin where the sand meets the shadow." He inspected Louise's body, noting the necklace's brutal twist. Strangled, oui, but with precision, no marks of resistance. Curious. He turned to Amy. "Nurse Letheran, you were close to Madame. Tell me of her fears." Amy recounted the letters, the amulet, Louise's tales of Raoul. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A brother's ghost, or a living hand cloaked in myth? The past, it seems, has a most insistent voice. The team gathered in the mess tent, shock etching their faces. Poirot paced, his cane tapping a rhythm. This room was locked, yet death entered. An impossibility? No, a puzzle. Each of you holds a piece. Speak, or I shall find it myself. Lavigny protested. "This is sacrilege! The curse!" Poirot cut him off. "Curses are tales men weave to mask their deeds. We seek truth, not superstition." As the day waned, Amy assisted Poirot, her nurse's precision aiding his methodical questions. The amulet, now in his hands, sparked a frown. "This is no artifact from your dig. Modern craftsmanship, disguised as ancient. A clue, Mademoiselle Amy, to a mind both clever and cruel." The camp mourned, but a spark of hope flickered. Poirot's presence was a beacon, his mind a blade to cut through the fog of fear. Louise's death, though raw, marked a turning point. The desert's secrets were stirring, and Amy felt the weight of truth pressing closer, like the relief's stone hands tightening on their prey. But for now, the night offered a fragile peace, the ziggurat silent under a starless sky, as if holding its breath
for the revelations to come. Chapter 4. Threads of Deception. The air at Tel Yarimja crackled with a restless energy, as if the desert itself mourned Louise Leidner's death while whispering secrets to those who dared listen. Nurse Amy Leatheran moved through the camp with a quiet resolve, her medical duties now overshadowed by the grim task of aiding Hercule Poirot in unraveling the murder. The expedition house, once a haven of scholarly chatter, felt like a stage where each player masked their true role. The ziggurat loomed beyond, its ancient stones a mute witness to the unfolding drama. Poirot had commandeered the antiquities room as his base, its shelves of clay tablets and seals now a backdrop to his meticulous probing. His presence was a paradox, his dapper suit and polished cane incongruous against the dust, yet his sharp eyes missed nothing. Amy stood by as he arranged Louise's letters on a table, their wax seals glinting like accusing eyes. "Mademoiselle Amy," he said, his voice a velvet blade, "you are my eyes in this camp. Tell me again of Madame Leidner's fears, these tales of a brother's vengeance." Amy recounted the details, the letter's archaic script, the references to Raoul, the drowned half-brother, and the eerie amulet found under Louise's bed. She was convinced he haunted her, but the amulet, it wasn't from the dig. Too new, you said. Poirot nodded, twirling his mustache. Précisément. A prop in a play of deception. The murderer weaves a tapestry of fear, using the past to cloak the present. But why? That is the thread we must pull. He began his interviews, summoning each team member with the precision of a conductor. Amy observed, noting the subtle shifts in posture, the flickers of unease. First came Dr. Eric Leidner, his face haggard, his pipe unlit. "Monsieur," Poirot began, "your wife spoke of a family curse. What did you know of her history?" Leidner sighed, rubbing his temples. "Louise was fragile. She told me of Raoul, her half-brother, lost in a river accident years ago. There were rumors, family disputes over inheritance. She felt guilt, as if her survival was a theft. I thought it was grief talking, not truth." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And these letters, did you see them before her death?" "Only the first," Leidner admitted. "I thought it a cruel jest, perhaps from a rival expedition. The dig world is not without its jealousies." Next was Father Lavigny, his beard quivering with indignation. "I am a scholar of texts, Monsieur Poirot, not a killer. Louise's fears were her own demons, perhaps divine justice for sins unspoken." Poirot leaned forward. "Your alibi, Father. You were translating a tablet the night of the murder? Yet Mademoiselle Amy saw you near the restricted cabinet days prior. What did you seek?" Lavigny flushed. "Mere curiosity. Some tablets hint at rituals forbidden even in ancient times. I meant to protect our work, not harm." Amy caught a tremor in his voice, a crack in his pious armor. Poirot dismissed him with a wave, turning to Miss Sheila Riley. She sauntered in, cigarette in hand, her defiance a shield. "So, the great detective wants my story. I'll make it quick. I didn't like Louise. Too dainty, always playing the victim to keep David wrapped around her finger. But murder? Not my style." "And yet," Poirot said, "you were seen arguing with her days ago, near the trenches. Words of venom, no?" Riley shrugged. "I told her to stop stringing David along. She laughed it off, said he was a boy with a crush. Didn't kill her for it, though." David Emmett entered next, his boyish face taut with grief. "I'd never hurt Mrs. Leidner. She was kind to me, saw me as more than a surveyor. Those letters scared her. I offered to stand guard, but she refused." Poirot tilted his head. "You were near her room that night, sketching by moonlight. "Did you see anything unusual?" Emmett hesitated. "A shadow, maybe, crossing the courtyard. I thought it was a worker, but it moved too fast." Dr. Carl Reiter was last, his Nordic reserve like a wall. "I study inscriptions, not people," he said curtly. "Louisa's death is tragic, but I know nothing of it." Poirot tapped his cane. "Yet you handled a tablet with a snake motif, one that mirrored Madame's fears, and Mademoiselle Amy saw you conceal it briefly. Why?" Reiter's jaw tightened. "A mistake. I meant to catalogue it privately. Its text was sensitive, a ritual curse, not meant for public eyes." As the interviews ended, Amy followed Poirot to the courtyard, where the team gathered for a sparse lunch of bread and olives. The mood was somber, the usual banter replaced by wary glances. "They all hide something," Amy whispered. "Even Leidner. His grief feels genuine, but there's a shadow behind it." Poirot nodded. "The heart of this crime lies in what is not said. We must test their truths." That afternoon, he proposed a bold move, a reenactment of the murder night. "We shall recreate the hours before Madame's death to stir the memory and perhaps the conscience." The team agreed, albeit grudgingly, assembling in the main house as dusk fell, the sky bruising purple.
Amy took her place in Louise's room, playing her part as the vigilant nurse. Poirot directed the others to their positions. Leidner in his study, Lavigny in the antiquities room, Riley developing photos, Emmett sketching outside, Reiter in his tent, Coleman checking supplies. The house creaked under the weight of silence, broken only by Poirot's instructions. "Move as you did that night. Let the past speak." As Amy sat by the cot, she heard a faint rustle outside the shutters. Her pulse quickened, but she stayed still, mimicking her vigil. The reenactment unfolded. Leidner's footsteps echoing, Lavigny's low chanting over texts, Riley's muttered curses from the dark room. But something felt off. A door creaked where none had before. A shadow flickered in the hall. Poirot halted the scene, his voice sharp. "Monsieur Coleman, you said you were at the supply tent, yet I hear you in the corridor. Explain." Coleman stammered. I checked the house locks, that's all. Routine." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And you, Monsieur Reiter, your tent is silent. Where were you, truly?" Reiter glared. "I stepped out for air. The heat was stifling." The reenactment dissolved into accusations. Lavigny pointed at Coleman. "He's been skimming funds. Perhaps he wanted Louise's jewels." Coleman retorted, "You're the one sneaking into locked cabinets, Padre." Amy whispered to Poirot, "The letters? Could they be a distraction? Someone planting them to frame another?" Poirot nodded. "A clever mind crafts a ghost to hide a hand. We need more." That night, a sandstorm howled in from the desert, trapping the team indoors. The wind's wail mimicked a human cry, fraying nerves. Amy, restless, explored the house, her lantern casting jagged shadows. In Louise's room, she noticed a faint scent, bitter, like almonds, lingering near the bed. Poison? No, the strangulation was clear, but the scent nagged her. She found Poirot in the antiquities room, examining the amulet under a magnifying glass. "This," he said, "is no ancient relic. The bronze is modern, the snake etched with tools not used in Assyria. Someone here plays a dangerous game." Amy shared the almond scent. Poirot's brow furrowed. Curieux. Perhaps a clue to the killer's method. Not poison, but something chemical. A sedative, perhaps, to ensure no struggle. As the storm raged, Amy slipped into the library, where Leidner kept expedition records. Rifling through papers, she found a letter, not in Louise's collection, but tucked in a ledger. It was typed, not handwritten, dated weeks ago. "Your wife's past will bury you both. Leave the dig or pay the price." No signature, but the paper matched the expedition's stock. She showed it to Poirot at dawn as the storm subsided. "This changes the game," he said. "The letters to Louise were personal, but this threatens Monsieur Leidner. A wider net, perhaps." He gathered the team in the mess tent, the air thick with dust and suspicion. "Mes amis," he declared, "the killer is among us. These letters, this amulet, they are not curses, but tools. Someone mimics the ancient to mask the modern. I have found a truth. The ink on the letters, it is not ancient. It is from a typewriter in this very camp." Gasps rippled. Riley's cigarette fell from her lips. "You're saying one of us wrote them?" "Oui," Poirot said. "And the method of murder, strangulation through a locked door, requires no ghost, only ingenuity. A thread, a pulley, a moment's distraction." Amy's mind raced. The almond scent, the typed letter, clues pointing to a calculated mind. She glanced at Emmett, his face pale. At Reiter, his hands clenched. At Lavigny, muttering prayers. Leidner stared at the floor, his grief a heavy cloak. As the team dispersed, Poirot pulled Amy aside. "Mademoiselle Amie, you have a nurse's eye for detail. Watch them today. The killer will betray themselves. A slip of the tongue, a glance too long." The dig resumed, workers clearing storm debris, but the mood was brittle. Amy tended to a sprained ankle, her eyes scanning the team. Riley lingered near Emmett, her usual barbs softened, as if seeking alliance. Lavigny avoided the antiquities room, instead praying at the ziggurat's base. Reiter was absent, claiming illness, but Amy spotted him near the river, washing something, a cloth, in the murky water. By evening, the camp settled into an uneasy truce, the sandstorm's chaos giving way to a crystalline sky. Poirot stood by the trenches, gazing at the stars. "The truth is near, Mademoiselle Amie. The killer believes their web is secure, but one thread frays. Tomorrow, we shall pull it." Amy nodded, her resolve hardening. Louise's death was no curse, but a human act, its roots tangled in greed, envy, or vengeance. The desert. It's held its breath. The ziggurat's shadow stretching long, as if pointing to the guilty. For now, the day closed with a fragile hope. Justice was stirring, its echo louder than the storm's fading wail.
Chapter 5. Veils Lifted in the Ziggurat's Shadow. The desert sun climbed high over Tel Yerimja, its rays slicing through the haze like a blade, illuminating the scars of the recent sandstorm. Nurse Amy Leatherin moved through the camp with a heightened awareness, her senses sharpened by Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of truth. Louise Leidner's murder had cast a pall over the expedition, transforming the once vibrant dig site into a labyrinth of suspicion. The ziggurat loomed over the trenches, its weathered tiers a silent judge, as if daring the living to unearth its secrets alongside their own. Poirot, ever the maestro of the human psyche, had shifted the investigation's tempo. After the reenactment's revelations, the typed letter threatening Dr. Leidner, the modern amulet masquerading as ancient, Amy felt the noose tightening around an unseen killer. The team's routine continued, but each shovelful of earth seemed to dig into their consciences as much as the soil. Amy's role as nurse now doubled as Poirot's confidant, her practical eye catching nuances the detective's questions provoked. Morning brought a new find, a clay jar, its rim etched with a frieze of intertwined snakes,
unearthed in the Eastern Trench. Dr. Leidner, his grief tempered by scholarly zeal, examined it under a tarp. "A ceremonial vessel," he murmured, "likely for libations to Nergal, god of death. The snakes suggest duality, protection or poison." Father Lavigny, hovering nearby, traced the carvings. "Nergal's wrath spares no one. This jar could seal a curse, or break one." His tone was fervent, but Amy noticed his hands tremble, as if the clay burned. Miss Sheila Riley, snapping photos, scoffed at, "More curse nonsense. You lot are obsessed. It's just a pot, not a prophecy." Yet her usual bravado faltered, her eyes darting to David Emmett, who was measuring the trench with a distracted air. Emmett, usually buoyant, seemed weighed down. "Mrs. Leidner would have loved this," he said softly, his pencil idle. Amy caught the pain in his voice, a young man's devotion snuffed out by violence. Dr. Carl Reiter, silent as a shadow, catalogued the jar's details, but Amy recalled his furtive act by the river, washing a cloth, perhaps erasing evidence. She made a mental note to tell Poirot. As the team broke for lunch, flatbread and lentil stew under a canvas awning, Poirot summoned Amy to the antiquities room. He held a small leather-bound book, its pages yellowed. This was in Madame Leidner's effects, hidden in a false-bottom jewelry box. A diary, but not the one she showed you. Read this entry, mademoiselle. Amy scanned the page, dated a year prior. "Eric suspects nothing, but I fear the truth follows me. Raoul's death was no accident. He knew of the theft, threatened to expose me. The fire was meant to silence him. But what if he survived? The letters here echo his voice." "Theft," Amy whispered, "and a fire, not a river. She told me Raoul drowned." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, a contradiction. Madame Leidner wove her own myths, perhaps to protect a deeper secret. This diary suggests a crime in her past, inheritance, perhaps, or betrayal. We must learn more." Amy nodded, her mind racing. Louise's fragility had masked a labyrinth of guilt. Could the killer know this, using her secrets against her? "Précisément," Poirot said. "The letters, the amulet, there are arrows aimed at her heart, but also a smokescreen for the killer's motive." That afternoon, Poirot orchestrated a new tactic, a walk through the camp's perimeter, ostensibly to inspect storm damage, but really to observe the team in motion. "The guilty move differently under scrutiny," he told Amy. "Watch their hands, their eyes." They passed the trenches where workers sang softly, their picks rhythmic. Leidner lingered by the jar, lost in thought. Lavigny knelt at a makeshift altar of stones, praying with fervor. Riley, reloading her camera, shot barbs at Emmett, who ignored her, his gaze fixed on the ziggurat. Reiter, usually elusive, was near the river again, this time sketching a map of the site's water channels. "Reiter's at the river too often," Amy whispered. "Could he be hiding something there?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "A possibility. Water cleanses, but it also conceals." Back at the house, Amy found a moment alone in Louise's room, searching for clues Poirot might have missed. Under a loose floorboard, she discovered a photograph. Faded, but clear. A young Louise, radiant, beside a man with her violet eyes and a sly smile. On the back, in her hand, "Raoul, before the fire, forgive me."
Amy's heart thudded. The man's features echoed Dr. Leidner's, same high cheekbones, same intense gaze. Was this Raoul, or a trick of memory? She slipped the photo into her pocket, determined to show Poirot. As evening fell,
Poirot gathered the team in the mess tent, the air thick with anticipation. "Mes amis," he began, "the murder of Madame Leidner is no act of ghosts, but of a mind, cunning and cruel. The locked room, the necklace noose, these are not mysteries, but mechanics. I propose a test. Each of you, write a sentence in your own hand. We shall compare it to the letters." Grumbles erupted, but Poirot's gaze silenced them. Papers and pens were distributed, and Amy collected the samples, her nurse's precision noting each writer's quirks. Leidner's elegant script, Lavigny's flourished capitals, Riley's scrawl, Emmett's neat print, Ryder's angular strokes. Poirot examined them under a lantern, his face unreadable. The typed letter to Monsieur Leidner, it came from this camp's machine, but the handwritten ones to Madame, the ink matches none of these. A forgery, crafted to mimic the ancient. Riley laughed nervously. "So what? Someone's playing scribe to scare us?" "More than scare," Poirot said. "To kill. And I suspect the motive lies in Madame's past. A theft, a fire, a brother betrayed." Leidner paled. "What are you implying? Louise was no criminal." Poirot raised a hand. "Her diary suggests otherwise. A secret she carried, one the killer exploited." Amy shared the photograph, and Leidner's breath caught. "That's impossible. Raoul died. She told me so. Yet the letters invoke him. And this face, does it not resemble another here?" Eyes darted, suspicion flaring. Emmett whispered, "It's like looking at Dr. Leidner, but younger." Ryder stood uprightly. "This is nonsense. I'm for bed." He stormed out, the tent flaps snapping behind him. Poirot turned to Amy. "Follow him, discreetly. The guilty flee when cornered." Amy trailed Ryder through the twilight, keeping to the shadows. He headed not to his tent, but to the ziggurat's base, where he knelt, digging with a trowel. She crept closer, heart pounding, as he unearthed a small tin box. Before she could act, he spotted her, his eyes wild. "Nurse, this isn't what it seems." "Then show me," she said, voice steady. He hesitated, then opened the box. Inside, a vial of clear liquid and a cloth, the faint almond scent Amy had detected in Louise's room. "For cleaning artifacts, not what you think." Amy's pulse raced. "We'll let Poirot decide." She escorted him back, the box in hand. Poirot examined the vial, sniffing cautiously. Chloroform, perhaps. To subdue without struggle. "Monsieur Ryder, your secrecy betrays you." Ryder collapsed into a chair. "I'm no killer. I found this by the river, thought it was from the dig. I hid it to avoid trouble." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Convenient. Yet the scent links to the murder night. As the team dispersed, Amy pulled Poirot aside, showing him the photograph. "This could be Raoul, or someone posing as him, and it looks like Leidner." Poirot nodded. "A masquerade, perhaps. The killer uses identity as a weapon." The next morning, Poirot announced a final act, a confrontation atop the ziggurat. "At dusk, the truth rises with the setting sun," he said, his voice a quiet thunder. The team trudged up the ancient steps, the wind carrying the scent of dust and time. Amy stood beside Poirot, the photograph and vial in her bag, her nerves taut. At the summit, the team formed a semicircle, the ziggurat's peak framing the reddening sky. Poirot paced, his cane a metronome. "Mes amis, Louise Leidner died not by curse, but by calculation. The letters, the amulet, the chloroform, these are tools of a modern mind, not an ancient wrath." He held up the photograph. "This man, Raoul or another, haunts our story. But the killer is no ghost. The strangulation required access, opportunity, and motive. The locked room, a simple trick, a thread through the shutters, pulling the necklace tight from outside. Lavigny gasped, "Blasphemy! To use sacred ground for such?" Poirot cut him off. "Sacred or not, the truth is profane. The motive lies in betrayal. Madame Leidner's diary speaks of a theft, a fire, a brother silenced. But who knew?" He turned to Riley. "Mademoiselle, your anger at Madame was no secret. Did you pen the letters to torment her?" Riley flushed. "I despised her, sure. Wrote a note or two to spook her. Anonymous, petty stuff. But kill? Never." Poirot nodded, then faced Emmett. "Your devotion was pure, but love blinds. Did you see more than you told?" Emmett shook his head. "I'd have died for her. I saw nothing." Finally, Poirot turned to Leidner. "Monsieur, your wife's secrets were yours too. Did you fear her past would ruin you?" Leidner's voice broke. "I loved her. Whatever she did, I forgave." Poirot paused, then pointed to the vial. The chloroform. This was the key. No struggle because Madame was unconscious. The killer entered, applied it, then staged the scene. Amy's breath caught as Poirot's gaze swept the group. "The thread is fraying. One of you stands on the edge of confession." The sun dipped, casting long shadows. The ziggurat seemed to pulse, its stones whispering of justice. Amy felt the weight of truth pressing closer, the killer's mask slipping. For now the moment hung suspended, a fragile calm before the storm of revelation.
Chapter 6. The Curse's Quiet Interment. The dawn at Tel Yarimjah broke with a stillness that felt like the desert holding its breath, the ziggurat silhouette sharp against a sky streaked with gold. Nurse Amy Leatherin stood at the edge of the camp, her eyes tracing the ancient mound as the weight of Louise Leidner's murder pressed heavier than ever. Hercule Poirot's investigation had woven a net of suspicion, its threads tightening around the expedition team, each a suspect, each a keeper of secrets. The revelations atop the ziggurat the previous evening had left the air charged, the killer's identity teetering on the edge of exposure. Amy's nurse's instincts, honed by years of reading human frailties, told her today would end the masquerade. Poirot had summoned the team to the expedition house's dining hall, its mud brick walls now a stage for his final act. The table was set not with breakfast, but with evidence. Louise's diary, the forged letters, the bronze amulet, the vial of chloroform, and the photograph of a man whose face haunted Amy's thoughts, Raoul, or someone eerily akin to Dr. Eric Leidner. Poirot stood at the head, his suit pristine despite the dust, his mustache a perfect arc framing a gaze that pierced like a desert hawk's. "Mes amis," he began, his voice a silken command. "Today we bury not only Madame Leidner, but the illusion of a curse. Her death was no act of ancient gods, but of a human heart, calculating, vengeful, and close. Let us unravel the final knot." Amy stood by the door, her medical bag a grounding weight, watching the team's faces, Leidner's grief-lined eyes, Father Lavigny's clenched jaw, Ms. Sheila Riley's defiant smirk, David Emmett's boyish pallor, Dr. Carl Reiter's icy reserve, Bill Coman's nervous fidgeting. The air crackled with anticipation, as if the ziggurat itself leaned closer to hear. Poirot lifted the diary. Madame Leidner carried a secret, a theft, a fire, a brother silenced. She wrote of Raoul, presumed dead, yet the letters invoked his name. Why? To terrify her? Oui, but also to distract us from a deeper truth. He turned to the photograph, holding it aloft. This man, Raoul, or so she believed, bears a striking resemblance to another. Monsieur Leidner, you claimed Raoul drowned, yet this diary speaks of fire. Explain. Leidner's hands trembled, his pipe forgotten. Louise was confused. She told me Raoul drowned in a river accident, a family dispute gone tragic. The fire, she never mentioned it. I thought it her imagination, weaving guilt into myth. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Or a lie to protect you both. But let us explore another thread. He picked up the amulet, its snake-etching glinting. This, a modern forgery, placed to fuel the curse's illusion. And the chloroform, used to ensure Madame did not struggle. A locked room, a necklace turned a noose, a silent death. The killer needed access, knowledge, and motive. Amy's pulse quickened as Poirot paced, his cane tapping a rhythm like a heartbeat. The letters, he continued, were typed and handwritten, mimicking ancient script. But the ink, the paper, they betray a modern hand. And the typed letter to Monsieur Leidner, threatening ruin, it points to a wider scheme. Father Lavigny interjected, his voice sharp. You accuse us all, monsieur, yet offer no proof. The gods' wrath. Enough of gods, Poirot snapped. The wrath is human. Let us revisit the night of the murder. Mademoiselle Amy, you heard a rustle, saw a shadow. Monsieur Emmet, you too saw movement in the courtyard. But the door was locked, the shutters secure. How, then, did death enter? Emmet shifted, his voice low. I thought it was a worker, maybe a thief, but it was too quick, like it vanished. Poirot nodded. A thief, perhaps, but not of artifacts, of life. He turned to Riley. Mademoiselle, you admitted to petty notes, but not the lethal ones. Yet your anger at Madame was no secret. Did it drive you further? Riley's chicken trembled. I had told you. I spooked her for fun. Jealousy, maybe. But strangle her? I'd rather break my camera. Poirot's gaze shifted to Reiter. Monsieur, your river excursions, your hidden cloth, the vial, why conceal them? Reiter's jaw tightened. I found the vial by chance. Thought it was from the dig. I hid it to avoid suspicion. I'm no murderer. Amy whispered to Poirot. The photograph, its resemblance to Leidner. Could it be a clue to identity, not just family? Poirot's mustache twitched. A keen observation, mademoiselle. Let us pull the final thread. He faced the group, his voice rising. The truth lies in Madame Leidner's past, not a drowned brother, but a burned one. Raoul, her first husband, not her sibling. A man named Frederick Bosner, a soldier presumed dead in a wartime fire in France, his fortune passing to Louise. She married Monsieur Leidner, believing the past buried. But Bosner lived, scarred, vengeful, and cunning. Gasps rippled. Leidner's face drained of color. Frederick? Impossible! She said he was gone, killed in 17. Poirot held up the diary. Her words betray her. The fire was meant to silence him. She believed he died, but he did not. He followed her here, to this desert, cloaking his revenge in the guise of a curse.
Amy's mind raced, the photograph's face merging with another in the camp. She scanned the team, her gaze landing on Richard Carey, the quiet archaeologist who had joined late, his face often shadowed by a hat, his manner reserved. His cheekbones, his eyes. Could it be? Poirot followed her look. Monsieur Carey, he called, step forward. Carey, who had lingered at the group's edge, stiffened. His voice was steady, but his hands betrayed a tremor. What is this, Poirot? I'm a hired hand, nothing more. No, Poirot said. You are Frederick Bosner, are you not? Scarred by fire, not water, and driven by a grudge. You forged the letters, planted the amulet. used chloroform to subdue your former wife, and strangled her with her own necklace, a poetic justice for her betrayal. Carey laughed, a harsh sound. You're mad. I'm Richard Carey, Oxford-trained, here to dig, not kill. Poirot produced the photograph. This face, yours, beneath the scars, the reenactment betrayed you. Mademoiselle Amy saw you move too swiftly, your limp, Raoul's old injury, slipping under pressure. And the chloroform vial, found by the river, where you washed your guilt. Carey's composure cracked, his eyes blazing. You have no proof. Poirot held up a cloth, retrieved from writer's tin. This bears traces of chloroform and your sweat, monsieur. The typewriter in the office, its ribbon matches the letter to Leidner. And your credentials, forged, a fiction to infiltrate this camp. The team stared, horror dawning. Leidner staggered. Frederick, you were her husband. Carey's face contorted, a dam breaking. She stole everything, my name, my wealth, my life. The fire was her doing to claim the inheritance. I survived, burned and broken, and tracked her here. The curse, my creation, to make her fear, to make her pay. Amy's heart pounded as Carey's confession spilled like sand from a shattered jar. I used the dig's own tools, papyrus, ink, the amulet I crafted. The chloroform ensured she'd feel nothing until the end. The necklace, a fitting end for her vanity. Poirot's voice was calm, final. You wove a myth, monsieur, but truth is relentless. The locked room was no mystery, a thread through the shutter, pulling the necklace tight. You slipped away, a shadow in the night. Carey lunged for the door, but Emmett and Coleman blocked him, their faces grim. Lavigny crossed himself, whispering, Justice, at last. Poirot signaled Amy to fetch the police, waiting in a nearby jeep. As Carey was led away, his defiance crumbled, his scars visible in the morning light, a map of his pain and rage. The camp exhaled, the tension dissipating like mist. Leidner sat, head in his hands. I loved her despite her secrets. I should have protected her. Amy touched his shoulder. You couldn't know. She carried her past like a weight. Raoul, subdued, lit a cigarette. I was cruel to her. Didn't think it'd end this way. Emmett wiped his eyes. She deserved better. Ryder, silent, packed his notes as if retreating into his work. Lavigny offered a prayer for Louise's soul, his fervor softened by sorrow. That evening, the team gathered under the stars, a quiet toast to closure. Leidner raised a glass of arrack. To Louise, and to truth, may she rest where the desert meets the sky. Amy clinked her glass, the weight of the case lifting. Poirot, preparing to depart, approached her. Mademoiselle Amy, your clarity was invaluable. The heart sees what the eye misses. She smiled. You made the puzzle clear, monsieur. I just held the pieces. As dawn broke, Poirot boarded a train to Baghdad, his silhouette fading into the dust. The ziggurat stood sentinel, its stones no longer menacing but serene, their secrets laid bare. Amy packed her medical kit, her contract nearing its end. The dig would continue, unearthing history without fear. The curse, a fiction born of human frailty, was interred at last, its echo silenced in the endless sands.